Can everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Usually people have trouble hearing me without a microphone, so I didn't think it was going to be an issue. But we're talking about being persuasive. And a lot of us, I'll tell you what, I woke up this morning and my goal was that you and I would get together, so thank you for showing up. And that what we would do is we would have, number one, we'd have fun. And number two, you'd come away with at least one new tactic that you could use to help people say yes to you. All right, and the scoop is, when we talk about persuasion, how many of you have some negative thoughts about persuasion? When you think of persuasive people, what are some of the negative things you think about them? So this is a workshop, so you're going to be talking to me. Whiny. Okay, what else do you think of people who are trying to persuade you? Please. Pushy. Okay, I heard pushy a couple places. What else? Controlling. What else? Persistent. Well, persistent can be good, because some of us need persistence. And you probably think about manipulation too, right? And it's like, well, we have these judgments about persuasion. And here's a scoop. When I think about persuasion, here's how I think about it. All of you have gifts. You can solve problems and help people get what they want. They just need to know that. And you need to find the people who need what you've got. So when it comes to persuasion, it's not like you're trying to manipulate people into doing things that they don't want to do, sell them things they don't want to buy, none of that kind of crap. It's about you being able to come up to them and have a conversation with them about what you can do to help them, how you can help solve their problem, and then give them the information they need to have in order to evaluate whether or not this is a good thing. So for you, it's about being able to present yourself well in any situation and increase the chances that the people who should work with you do, and frankly, that the people who shouldn't work with you get the heck away from you. Because a lot of us there are plenty of people that we think we should be working with. And the scoop is we shouldn't. And what ends up happening is that we work on it, because okay, how many, raise your hand, you hate to hear no. Oh, come on. The rest of you love to hear no? Yeah, it's like, I hate to hear no too. But so what ends up happening a lot of times is when people say no to us, we feel badly about ourselves. Well, what did I do wrong, or why didn't they like me? And this kind of stuff. Here's a scoop. What we really want to do is the people who should work with us, we need to give them the information so that they can say yes. The people who should not work with us, we want them to say no, because we want them to go away now. Because then we are one step closer to the people who are going to say yes to us, and those are the folks we want to hang out with. Fair enough?
Yes.
All right. So today, we're going to we'll start out talking about your ideal client. I want you to close your eyes just for a second. When I say client, because not all of you deal with people outside your company, but those of you who do, think of those clients. Those of you who work with internal clients, think of them. So close your eyes. Think of this person, or these people, who are the folks you love to work with. No falling asleep, though. I get us right after lunch. Okay. So now, open your eyes and just shout out some of the qualities of ideal clients for you. Shout them out.
Patient.
Patient. Love patient people. Kind. Responsive. What else? Listens. Understanding. Honest. Have money to pay you. Like those guys do. Okay, so those are your ideal clients. And then, of course, there are the clients from hell. And I don't even have to ask you to close your eyes and think of those people. Because you're already thinking about the person who, when you look down and see caller ID on your phone, you think, can I let it go to voicemail again? So what are the qualities of the clients from hell that you have? Always changing their mind. Indecisive. Arrogant. Demanding. Manipulative. Tricky. Okay. All of these people you don't want to spend any time with. And have you ever wondered why there are some people you connect so well with and others that you don't? And a lot of times it's easy for us to say, well, it's all them, and we know that we kind of play a role in it too. So here's the scoop. You already have in your toolkit a bunch of tactics and strategies that you can use to work with your clients. And frankly, all the stuff we're going to talk about works just as well at home, trust me. So we're going to give you some more things because once again, my goal is to give you at least one new thing you can walk away with today and use right now to be more successful. And let's dive right in. Here's something, okay, in the 20-some years I've been doing communication, this is one of the most powerful ideas I've ever come across. It's called the persuasion cycle. And since I don't have a split personality, I'm going to stand over here. On the persuasion cycle, you can see, okay, neuroscience nerd. I study how the brain works and how that affects the choices we make and the behavior that we have. And then use that to create more effective communications for my clients. Neuroscience tells us that our brains, all of our brains have to go through these different steps in order to agree to do anything. And everybody's brain starts at the top in resisting. And here's the wonderful, important thing to know about resisting. People's brains are biologically set to say no to you. This is where everybody starts. Don't take it personally. Here's what happened. Back in the old days when we were in the jungle, our brain had one job. And our brain's job was to keep us from dying. So your brain was always scanning the environment to see if there were physical or verbal risks or threats, and if these things were going to kill you. So what happens is that part of your brain is still doing this today. Your unconscious mind is doing this all the time, and your conscious mind does some of it. And what ends up happening is that whenever you sit down and present a new idea to anybody about anything, their unconscious mind automatically goes to, is this going to kill me? Even people who want to say yes to you will resist you. It's got nothing to do with you. Let it go. Let it go. Your first job in being a persuasive person is to move people from resisting to listening. Because nobody can say yes to you if they're not hearing what you're saying. But listening is also a two-way street. You have to listen to them. And then the next step you need to take with them is move them from listening to considering, then from considering to willing to do to doing to glad they did, and for a lot of you, willing to do some more. People go through all of these steps in order to agree to anything that you're proposing. Here's the blessing for me for this, and I hope for you. And that is, people don't have to make quantum leaps to say yes to us. Because it doesn't work. And here's how I know. When I started my communications business 21 years ago, I thought I had to find clients and I had to make cold calls to do that. All right, how many of your palms are sweating because you're thinking cold calls? God, phone weighs 50 pounds. Don't want to pick that up. Me too. Here's what I thought. I thought it was my job when I was making a cold call in a 5-minute phone conversation to move somebody from resisting to willing to do. Guess how successful I was? Say it. I stank. People can't make that kind of quantum leap. What I've discovered since then, and let's just talk about the new business process, is that my job to do on a cold call was to move people from resisting to listening, which means have a conversation with them. And then the purpose of the conversation was to move people from listening to considering, which meant the goal of the conversation was to set up a meeting with them. Then, once I had a meeting with them, it was my job to move them from considering to willing to do by getting them to say, okay, do me a proposal. And then it was the job of the proposal to get them to move from willing to do to doing. And frankly, doing is what we're all great at, right? You're in business because you have a talent and a skill, probably more than one. You just want the opportunity to do for people and to make money doing it. Which means that the toughest part of the cycle for you, as it is for most of us, is probably that front end. Moving people from resisting to listening to considering. Now, how many of you have ever had buyer's remorse? Raise your hand. Right. How many of you have ever worked with people who've had buyer's remorse? Raise your hand. Right. Here's what happens. Now that you know you have this framework of the persuasion cycle, what happens is that you're sitting in front of somebody with a proposal and you think they're ready to sign off, so you think they're willing to do. And they say, well, you know, I need to think about this a little bit more. Let me think about it overnight, or let me think about it over the weekend. And you go away and you think, darn, I thought they were going to sign off on this thing. And what happens to a lot of us is that we kind of do our tail between our legs and feel badly about it. But here's the scoop. The breakdown has occurred somewhere between listening and considering. So when somebody says no to you, or says I have to think about it, instead of feeling badly about yourself and leaving the room and wondering what the heck you did wrong, here's what you do to combat that. You ask them one simple question. And that one simple question is there, it sounds like there's something that's missing. I haven't given you everything you need to know to make a good decision. What is it that if I gave it to you, you'd be able to decide? And most people, given that direct question, will be straight with you. And they'll tell you, well, you know, I'm concerned about this, or you didn't give me this. And great, then you can address that objection right up front. And then you can move them to willing to do it. So use this as an opportunity. Buyer's remorse happens at the front end of the cycle. When it happens to you, when you're presenting an idea to anybody, and you thought they were ready to say yes, and they aren't, ask them what they need. And it's not that you're trying to sell them something in that moment. What you're trying to do is give them information that they really want to have, and increase the chance that they will actually say yes to you. So the persuasion cycle, it's a gift, because you realize these are the steps everybody's brain has to go through in order to do anything. Now that you know this, you can pay attention to where people are in it and move them to the next logical place to be. Make sense? Okay, some heads nod. Say yes. Yes. Lovely, lovely. Okay. Oh, and by the way, so who are my note takers? Like people who love to take notes. Okay, and so good. Here's the scoop. I come to stuff like this, and I want to catch everything that's on the slides, and I want to get all the important stuff. And that means that 50% of the time, I'm so busy taking notes, I am not in the room. I want you to be in this room and have fun. So what I've done is I've put together an outline of all the good stuff I'm going to cover. And I'm literally going to pass the hat. Not for money, although you put money in there, I'll take it. But if you want an outline of today's presentation, take out your business card and write outline on the back. And I will email you an outline of all the good stuff, so you can just sit here and enjoy the presentation. Oh, by the way, I'm also going to give away one copy of my book, literally called Getting Others to Do What You Want. Oh, what it is. And if you want to be entered in the raffle, at the end of this, I'll pick out a name. So if you want to be entered in the raffle, just stick your business card in. I also do a once-a-month newsletter on neuroscience, communication, and humor. So if you want the newsletter, then write newsletter on the back of your card. So if you just want to be in the raffle for the book, drop your card in. If you want the outline for today's presentation, write outline on the back. If you want the newsletter, then write newsletter on the back. You will only get what you want and nothing else from me. So you guys sat in the front, you get to pass the hat first. All right, so on to more fun stuff. This is a graphic that creeps me out every time I see it. Because my company's name is Wordsmith. And what ends up happening is that I help companies figure out what to say. You take a look at this graph here, and you will see that little smidgy, the smallest part of the pie chart, which is 7%, that's the impression that people get from the words that you use. Only 7%. The next biggest slice of this pie is 38%. Voice, tone, and quality is the next group of information they get from you. And finally, a whole 55% is body language. And the first time I saw this, I thought, that can't possibly be right. No. Words are more important. My company name is Wordsmith, for heaven's sake. And here's how I know it's true. If I were to stand up here and say to you, I'm very excited to be here, well, what would you think? Just shout it out. No, you wouldn't buy it. Because the body language and the words don't match. And neither does the voice, tone, and quality. So here's the scoop. We all know people can be coached on what to say. And a lot of us practice our messages. But most people are less aware of their voice, tone, and quality, and pretty much unaware of their body language. So we will believe the body language every time. This is good data for you to know. So it's not just practice your words and think about your messages. It's also about looking about how you show up in a room. But here's the real cool thing about body language. You can read people's body language to read their minds. Interested? Okay, then let me tell you something about that. There are 3 ways that people's brains process information. 3 ways that people learn. And what I need now is a volunteer. I promise all you need to do, thank you, bless you. I don't even need to apologize for asking for volunteers. Hi, you are Kaylin. So Kaylin is now going to show us the body language of a looker. Kaylin is a looker. Lookers make up 75% of the population. Lookers process information through pictures and images. That's how they think. If you want to figure out if Caitlin is a looker, here is the body language that she will show you. First, she will stand straight, which she's already doing. And then her shoulders will be a little bit tense. So raise your shoulders up a little bit. There you go. A little tense. Okay. And Caitlin will have thin lips. Suck them in. And she will also have, although you can't see it, and I can't see it standing next to her, she will also have wrinkles in her forehead because she looks up and to the right. So look up and to the right. You look up and to the right when you're remembering things that you have seen. Caitlin will also dress very well. She dresses for style. There we go. And Caitlin will give you lots of eye contact. Give lots of eye contact. This is how a looker looks. So give Caitlin a hand. So as I mentioned, lookers are 75% of the population, which means if you're standing in front of a group of people, most of them are going to be lookers. Here's how you connect with them. You do 2 things. First thing you do is you use language that has a visual component to it. So you say things like, I see what you mean, or let's take a look at that, or picture this, because that's how their brains process information. You are automatically making a connection with them. The second thing that you do with lookers is you give them lots of eye contact, because they believe if you are not looking at them, you are not seeing them, and they are invisible to you. So use words that have a sound component and give them lots of eye contact. That's how you appeal to lookers, 75% of the population. All right, so who's going to be my next volunteer? Please, come on. This is Sandy. Thank you, Sandy.
Nice to meet you.
So Sandy is now going to be a listener. Listeners process information through sounds and words. Through sounds and words. And here's how listeners look to you. First thing, listeners do not dress as well as lookers do. No offense. From the way you dress, I could not tell that you're a listener.
I don't even hear you.
The next thing about listeners is that they have a tendency to look down and to the left.
Where am I looking right now? I was looking
Down and to the left. Because that's where your head goes when you remember something you have heard. Listeners also have a tendency, because if you notice it, when Sandy's looking down to the left, her ear is kind of pointed at you. That's how she gets information. She's pointing her ear at you to hear what you have to say. A lot of times, listeners are also people who, when they think, they move their lips. Move your lips. There you go. And sometimes listeners actually even say things out loud. So mumble to yourself. Because they process information through words and sounds. So they are literally talking to themselves, working through things. The other thing about listeners, these are the people you get in their car, they turn the ignition, and the music comes on really loud. So these are listeners. Give Sandy a round of applause. Listeners are 20% of the population. So they're our next biggest group. If you want to connect with listeners, here's what you do. You use words that have a sound component. Sounds good to me. I want to listen to what you have to say. I want to hear you out. So you use words that have listening sound components. The other thing about listeners that you need to know is that too much eye contact freaks them out. It makes them really uncomfortable, which of course means they're less likely to say yes to you, right? And I will tell you, my favorite listener story, which shows you what a fool I can be. I was in my 20s before I knew any of this stuff. And I'm sitting across the table from a corporate controller. And this guy, I'd been in meetings with him before, and never looked at me. And I thought, well, he's a numbers guy. Maybe he just likes looking at the numbers on the table in front of him and explaining this stuff to me. And then I thought, well, maybe he's just socially inept and just doesn't know how to make eye contact. And then, because I was in my 20s and stupid, I thought, I think he's just looking at my chest. Not that my chest was in a great shape. But, so there's one day I actually did this. I said, excuse me, I'm up here. Yeah, it makes me cringe when I think about it. And the guy was a listener. He was never going to give me lots of eye contact. All I did was make him and me feel more uncomfortable. So now that I know this, when you're dealing with a listener, you look at them and then you look away when you're speaking. You look at them and then you look away. You don't give them too much eye contact, and you don't expect a lot of eye contact from them. This is how to be successful with a listener. 20% of the population, they process information in words and sounds. Which takes us to our last group. So who's our final volunteer? Oh, come on, you realize it's not painful.
Can we do it again?
No. Come on, somebody say Caitlin. Oh, please come out. And you are? Louise Thompson, and she's with Ivy Tech. So she is going to be our toucher. Not what you think. Okay. Touchers, 5% of the population. They process information through feelings and tactily. Okay. So as a toucher, what goes on with Louise is that she has, okay, touchers, these are the people who are generally, these are the huggers. So these, you can tell a toucher right because they will hug you. It's the first thing they do. The other thing about touchers, and other ways to identify them, is that they usually have deep voices. Give me your deep voice.
Okay, deep voice.
There you go. Touchers also generally have full lips. Stick them out. Other things about touchers, they dress for comfort rather than style. Although, once again, I wouldn't say you're a toucher from the way you dress. But here's the scoop. Because touchers process information through feelings and tactily, they need to be close to you. They want to connect with you physically. So thank you, Louise, for doing this. Give her a hand of applause. You are dealing with touchers. What you do is, if it feels comfortable to you, let them touch you. If it does not feel comfortable to you, don't pretend it does, because they will pick up on it. The other thing about touchers is when you want to connect with them verbally, what you do is you use words that have a feeling or a touching component, a tactile component. I feel your pain. I want to get in touch with you. So you use phrases like that in order to connect with touchers. And let them reach out and touch you if you feel comfortable with that. And if you feel comfortable, then reach out and touch them. Because that's how they make connection and how they build rapport. And you're sitting here thinking, okay, so I'm a looker and I'm dealing with a listener. What do? Don't give them too much eye contact and don't expect too much eye contact from them. We all have a okay, actually, close your eyes. I want you to remember a really important event in your life. I don't care what it is, just remember that event. And pay attention to how you're remembering it. Are you remembering it because you're seeing pictures of it? Are you remembering it because you're describing it to yourself in words? Or are you remembering it because of how you're feeling about it, how you felt about it in that moment? Okay, open up your eyes. This is how you process information. Of course, you also process information. If you're a listener, you also process information visually or tactily. But the scoop is you've got one primary style. And this is the style you default to. And because we generally are unaware of this stuff, we figure everybody processes information the same way that we do, and we're wrong. Which leads us to create some clients from hell. So what was I doing with the controller? I was turning him into the client from hell, because I was expecting eye contact and I wasn't getting it, and I thought it was his fault. Now I know I just need to find another way to reach this guy. It's got nothing to do with him liking me or not liking me, or being socially inept. Which is a really freeing thing to know. So people don't have to be me anymore. I just need to figure out who they are and come at them in a way that they like to get information, rather than shoehorning them into the way I present stuff. Make sense? Make sense? Okay. And how many of you are sitting here thinking, okay, my husband's a listener, my son's a toucher, my daughter's a how many? You were sitting here analyzing your family. Good. Think about the people you work with too. And the next time, and some people will say to me, but if I'm not sitting across from somebody, if I'm just getting emails, how can I know what kind of style this person has? And the answer is you look at the words they use. Because lookers will use more words with visual components. Touchers will use more words with sound or tactile. And listeners will use more sound words. Know this. Watch for this stuff. You will be shocked now how much of this stuff you see. And what happens is that I'm not asking you to change how you think or how you present yourself. I'm asking you to be aware of the people around you and see what it is they like and present information in a way that makes it easier for them to say yes to you. Make sense? Because let's face it, if you're a looker and, and somebody's giving you lots of eye contact, you feel more of a rapport with them. Here's another good thing, because I'm a neuroscience nerd. You have in your brain something called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons. What this means is that you're sitting across from somebody and your body has an automatic tendency to mimic their body language. I say let it happen. If you're sitting across from a toucher, touchers have a tendency to lean in. So your body will automatically want to lean in. Let it happen. You don't need to sit there and analyze everything you're doing. You may want to do this at the beginning because it's new and you have to practice it. But mimic the body language of the person you want to create a connection with, because that builds rapport. And it's something that people usually don't do. Body language, it's great stuff. It tells you how people think. You can read their minds, you can present your information in a way that they are more likely to receive it. Sound good? Okay, say yes. Yes, okay. Go out there and practice this stuff. Okay, this is what it means to you. You can be more successful because you're presenting information not in a way that's foreign to you, but in a way that makes sense for the people you're trying to reach. Because the whole idea is for you to be more successful. Okay, now Q&A techniques. Matter of fact, I told you, pay attention to Q&A techniques. But for all of us, here's a scoop. We have a tendency to walk into, and how many of you have ever heard Q&A is the most important part of a meeting? Nobody's heard this? Okay, Q&A is the most important part of a meeting. Now you've heard it. Take it from me. Because what happens is that people have a tendency to make decisions based on how we answer their questions. Because they figure we've practiced the presentation part of it, they want to see how we work under fire. And what generally happens in Q&A is that we sit there and before we go in, there's a question we want people to ask. Because I got a great answer to this question. I hope they ask me this question. And we sit there and we wait. Ask me the question, I'm ready. And then they never ask us the question. And we had this great answer for them, and they never get to hear it. That's because we have a tendency to believe that the people who are asking the questions are the people in charge. And we're wrong. The people who have the answers, which is you're the people who are in charge, really, because you have things that they need to know. So don't ever feel like the questioners are the people who run the meeting. You, as the person in charge of the information that they want to know, you run it. You have every bit as much of a reason to be there as them. The first thing you do before you do any kind of meeting, meeting or conference call or webinar or any kind of exchange of information where there's going to be Q&A, the most important thing you can do is sit down and write your goal for this, which takes maybe 10 seconds. And here's why you do that. Neuroscience nerd. There is in your brain something called the reticular activating system. This wants you to get what you want, but you have to tell it. It's part of your unconscious mind. And what happens is that when you write down a goal that says, I want the client to approve this proposal. This information gets into your brain and you write it down so you move it from your short-term into your long-term memory. Your unconscious mind is now chewing on this and trying to figure out ways to help you make this happen. And you're not paying any attention to this at all. Here's how I know it works. If I say, don't think of a red Corvette, what are you thinking about? Red Corvette. Because suddenly your brain knows this is important, so it starts thinking about it. You won't be thinking about a red Corvette at 3 this afternoon, but chances are, part of your brain still will be. Same thing is true with your reticular activating system. You tell it, it's important, I want the client to approve this proposal. And what it does is it chews on this, and it comes up with ways for you, without you even paying any attention to it, ways for you to get what you want. So set your goal, not because it's a nice thing to do, because it's a smart thing to do. And you get all of your brain working with you in order to get to your goal. First thing you do. Second thing you do is figure out the 3 things you want people to remember after this meeting is over. 3 things. So it's stuff that you want to tell people. It's also stuff they need to know. And you write that down as well. Once again, moves it from your short-term memory into your long-term memory. Somebody asks you a question, you'll remember that you want to tell them this particular thing. And you'll work that information in because you've been paying attention to it. So you will no longer be sleepwalking before you go into a meeting. Now, here are 4 great techniques that you can use. Well, 3.5, because there's one I really don't have. 4 techniques that you can use to be more effective in Q&A. The first one is called bridging. What bridging does is it answers the questions that the person has asked you and then gives them more information than they expected. So you're using this as an opportunity to convey information to people. And here's a scoop. A lot of people think that bridging is what politicians do. They have their talking points, and all they do is spew their talking points. They're not bridging, they're just obfuscating. They're just putting up a smoke and not answering the question. You're different. You will answer the question. So you see QA, QA up at the top. Q stands for question, A stands for answer. Q is the question that the person is asking you. Now let's just put you in a new business situation. So the person asks you, okay, why do you think you are the right partner for us? That's the question. Then you start with big A. We believe that we're the right partner for you because we've been serving companies in your industry for 15 years. And then you say, and why is that important? And then you answer your question by saying, we know all the challenges you're facing. You don't have to smarten us up on any of this. There's not going to be a lot of time you're going to spend educating us. We can hit the ground running. Then we've got Q small a and QA. This is where somebody asks you a question, a yes or no question. And what do we usually do when people ask us yes or no questions? We say yes or not. And then we miss out on the whole opportunity. Because we know what these people need to know. They don't know it. I had a high school teacher who used to say, to know something, you need to know something. They don't know what they don't know. So it's our job to let them know the things they need to know. So in this instance, you answer the yes or no question, and then you ask yourself a follow-up question, and then share that information. So if we're going to ask the same question in a similar way, it would be, you believe that your company is the best partner for us. And you say, yes, but you're probably wondering why I think that. And I believe that because we have the most industry experience, or most experience in your industry. We know how to solve the problems that you face. You see the difference between just saying yes and then giving a reason for your yes? You're being more persuasive. You're answering the question that they should have asked. Which then takes us down to QAA, which is they ask the question, you answer it, and you don't ask yourself a follow-up question, you just keep going on into your next answer. So it could be, why do you believe that your company is the right partner for us? And you say, we believe we're the right partner for you because we know your industry. And because we know your industry, we know that you are facing this particular problem, and we already have a solution for it. Here you go. So you have used bridging as a way to push more information toward them that they really need to know, but they didn't know they needed to know. Okay? Make sense? Good, okay. In that case, let's do listing. Listing is your second technique. And what goes on here is that listing forces people to listen to a longer answer than they expected to, and makes them shut up while you do it. Here's the magic of it. Somebody asks you a question, and we'll just stick with the same default question. Why do you believe that your company is the right partner for us? and you say, there are really 3 reasons for this. First, we know your industry. Second, we serve the top companies in the industry, so we see the trends that are going on. And third, we've been around for 20 years, and we're going to be around for a long time to serve your needs. What happens is when you tell somebody there are 3 parts to this answer, they will listen to you and let you give them. It's rare that you ever get interrupted when you're doing listening. So I say, make them sit there and be quiet and listen to you. But the thing that you have to do is you have to let them know the number up front, and you also have to use that number when you're giving your answer. So if you say 3 things, then say 1, 2, 3, first, second, third, whatever. Because people will sit and listen to that. And I say 3 is usually optimal, despite the fact that there are 4 fingers up there. 3 is optimal because that's what people can keep in their short-term memory. 3 things. If you say 4 or 5, they've already lost whatever the first one was. And by that point, you're probably talking too long, and you may be pushing them back into resisting. 3 is good. So listening. And it's great for process questions, too. Now, how are we going to do this? And you say, well, there are really 3 steps to doing that. And then you share the 3 steps. This stuff is great. It works. The next technique that you've got is well, actually, that's the next technique is hooking. Now what you think? Hooking. Hooking is when you give somebody a taste of an answer, hence the ellipses up there. So they ask you the question, and you kind of give them a leading answer. Why do you believe that yours is the best partner for us? And you say, you'd be surprised what other clients in your industry have to say about working with us. Okay, so what other clients in this industry have to say? This is why I don't like hooking. People use hooking because they want to engage people in the conversation. And here's what goes on. They do that, and they lose control. You have to sit there and wait for somebody to ask you the follow-up question. Sometimes it doesn't happen. So I say, use the other techniques, they're better. And plus, hooking can sound kind of smarmy, too. And that's not what you want to do. Which then takes us to our final one, and that is flagging. So flagging is when you say to somebody, listen up, I'm about to tell you something really important. So somebody says, the question is, all right, so you believe that you're the best partner for us. And you say, if you remember nothing else about the conversation we've had today, remember this. And the scoop is, when you tell somebody else's brain that something is important, they will stop and listen. So make sure that you only use flagging when something really is important. All right, so these are the 3 techniques that you can use to be more effective and take control of communication in a meeting and get people to say yes to you. And I just had a crap load of other stuff in here. Yeah, because you've been having so much fun, we can't get to. But I'll tell you what, if you sign up for the outline, I will send it to you anyway. That's bonus information, so you'll still be smart. Here's the scoop. Before you came in here, you didn't realize that there were a bunch of stages that everybody's brain had to go through in order to say yes to you. Now you know, and you know that you don't have to make a quantum leap to get people to say yes. You just need to move them from resisting to listening, from listening to considering, from considering to willing to do to doing glad they did, and happy to do some more. The next thing we talked about is body language. Now you know there are 3 ways that people process information. They either think in pictures and images, and if they do, what are they? Lookers. They think in words and sounds, what are they? Listeners. They process information through feelings, and tactily they are touchers. Okay. And now you know to watch for the signs of people, watch their body language, listen to their language, and then use language and use body language that appeals to them and builds rapport with them and helps them feel more comfortable with you. And then we just went through all those Q&A techniques, the 4 of them. Bridging, where you answer their question, and then you give them more information than they expected, either by asking yourself a follow-up question or just giving them more information. And never again being in a meeting where somebody asks you a yes or no question and you say yes or no. Second thing, we've got listening. Now you know. Okay, I have my messages that I came in from wanting to share. I can use this opportunity to share them. There are 3 reasons why we should do this, or 3 things you need to know, or 3 steps in the process. 1, 2, 3. And you force people to listen to you longer than they otherwise might. Then we've got hooking, which gives them that taste of the idea. You'd be surprised what people say about this. Use it sparingly. I present it to you because it is an option, and you may find a situation where it works. And then finally, flagging, where you say, this is really important, sit up straight, like your mother would say, sit up straight, listen to me. That's what you do with flagging. And what ends up happening is that you become much more effective in any meeting situation because you're watching the body language of the people around you. You're knowing where they are in the persuasion cycle and how to move them to the next logical place to be. And you're answering not only the question they have asked you, but you're giving them the information they need to know. Anybody have any questions or comments so far? Because I promised you I would be on time. Yeah, I get the thumbs up from the background. Okay. Any questions? All right, then just give me some general comment. What did you think about what we talked about today?
Very valuable.
Very valuable. Love that comment. Okay. And what are you going to use?
All of it.
All of it. Okay, all of it. Good. Here's what I want you to do. It's neuroscience again. And this works for the entire conference. If you do nothing with everything you've learned today within the next week, you will lose it. This will have been an interesting way to spend some time, but it's not going to move the needle for you. So I invite you, at this moment, to ask yourself, what am I going to pick out of these 3 things I learned today that I'm going to practice within the next week? It could be that you decide, okay, I've got a meeting that's coming up, I'm going to pay attention to Q&A techniques, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write my goal, I'm going to write my 3 messages, and then I'm going to practice bridging. Or it could be that you decide, I'm going to go to the office and look at people's body language and figure out who's a looker, who's a toucher, who's a listener. It could be that you're going to go back to your office and think about this conversation you need to have with your husband on something and figure out where he is on the persuasion cycle because you want to do something and you think he's going to be in resistance. I want you, okay, 5 seconds. Close your eyes. Pick the one thing you're going to do in the course of this next week to make sure you carry this learning out of this room and into your lives and it makes a difference for you. That one thing. And if you're smart, before you leave today, you'll write it down because now you know it's neuroscience. When you write something down, you move it from your short-term memory into your long-term memory. You get your reticular activating system paying attention to it, and you make it happen. So thank you for being with me this afternoon, and go out and use this stuff to make your lives better. Okay, so I promised, where'd that hat go? Where's the hat with everybody's business cards? Perfect, okay. So we need to pick out the name of the person who wins the book. All right, and you get to pick it out. That's fine, we can get back to it. Okay, so we have here somebody who's enterprising enough to write down her information. Good for her. Chandra Corey, boy, I can't read your last name. Chandra? Chandra? Perfect. Okay, Chandra's the winner. All right, and if you really, thank you. And if you really wanted a copy of this book and didn't get it, here's the scoop. Let me tell you what's in it. Getting others to do what you want. I believe that we as business people screw ourselves over every day because we think it's all about us. It's not that we're power mad or narcissistic, it's we're stressed out and overwhelmed. And in the moment, we cannot distinguish the difference between telling people what to do and getting them to do what we want. I believe there are 4 steps to make this happen. First is you need to get your brain back because chances are you have lost your mind. Second is you need to get clear on your goals because nobody's going to follow you if you don't know where you're going. Third is you need to get persuasive. You need to practice that persuasion cycle and make that useful to you. And the 4th thing is then you need to get communicating. So you need to use these techniques that we were talking about reading people's body language to read their minds, and creating messages that people actually want to listen to. And because I'm a neuroscience nerd, at the end of every chapter, you bet there are exercises in this so that you can use this information and make it your own. This book is $20 if you want one. There are copies at the back of the booth where everybody came in. And by the way, I've also got, so this is great for lookers and listeners and touchers. If you are a listener, the 10 biggest mistakes in business communication and how to avoid them. 45-minute CD about all the crap that we do that shoots ourselves in the foot at the office. This is great for listeners because it's an audio program. And this is $10 on its own. If you want both of them, I give you a deal, it's 25 bucks. So if this stuff helps you, go out and find it. But mostly, keep the promise that you've made to yourself. Do the one thing in the course of the next week that you promised to make your life a better place. And good luck. And reach out and let me know how it goes. Thank you.